emails out, since it's an opt-in database, we can actually see who's opened it, what links they've clicked on, who comes back 7 weeks later to revisit the opportunity, and it alerts our recruiter, which then our recruiter is reaching out to those physicians, whether it's an email or a warm phone call as well. A couple other pieces. We're on all the top relevant job boards 24/7 throughout our client search. And we are the largest end user in the nation of Doximity. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with that platform, but it is the largest network of physicians in the nation. Over 85% of all practicing physicians are members. So what that platform allows us to do is, when we're going in there for a family medicine search, let's just say, because that's a big need everywhere. So we'll go in and select family medicine. We can select years of experience. We can select board certification, past ties to a certain state, past ties to multiple states, rural versus metro, things like that. So it's going to take what's going to start at 100,000 candidates and shrink it down. So we're focusing our time and energy on the individuals that are going to meet your initial search parameters. So that's kind of what helps our time to place considerably. And just making sure we're focusing our energy on the candidates that are going to be a good fit for your community. And then lastly, our recruitment partnership. Something that's different about Jackson Physician Search is we're all regionally based. So I'm here in Stillwater, Minnesota, born and raised in Minnesota. My recruitment team is based in St. Louis. Every member of that team, which is 7 recruiters now, is born and raised in the Midwest. And I also have a recruiter now positioned in Omaha, who's been there about 6 or 7 months. His wife has family there. Like anybody else, they wanted to get close to family. They had a young kid. Grandma and grandpa aren't far away. So that's how I think we differentiate ourselves a little bit, and just a little bit about our process. You're on mute there, John.
Sorry about that. Question for all three of you. What do you do to ensure that the candidates that you place are the best fit for your hospital and your patients?
Well, I'll start with that on the recruiting side, and then if you guys want to jump in, Chris and Treg, it starts on the front end with our process of visiting the facility, getting to know the key stakeholders, getting an understanding of the day-to-day of the physicians that are there and the support team, seeing the community. So we have the ability really to sell this through the eyes of a physician. We've been there. We've met Dr. Smith. He's a little quirky at first. Give him 30 minutes, he'll warm up, you'll love him. Just those little intricacies that if we don't get those pieces, we really can't set up these physicians to be able to interview at a high level. But by the time we get them to Chris or Treg or whoever else we're working with, they're genuinely interested in the opportunity, they're interested in the community, and there really shouldn't be any surprises in regards to those things. Chris and Treg?
I'll jump in. So I think you hit it right on the head. For us, it's about cultural fit. I think that, we're looking for something very specific, and we've been very fortunate from the fact that we have a medical staff that's very long tenured. They want somebody that's going to come in and be a reflection of how they practice and what that looks like. So they were looking for something very specific. Culturally, it's very important for them to fit the community as well as the facility. And so all the candidates that we've had so far have been a good fit from that standpoint. And so I think that's the exciting part of it, is by the time we get the candidate, they've been vetted. We kind of talk through what that looks like specifically to us and what we are looking for specifically. And so you're not wasting time on candidates that aren't a cultural fit or aren't meeting the expectations that we would have for a candidate. So I think that's been our viewpoint.
I'll echo what Treg said. I mean, it is about fit culturally, and the thing that we've experienced with Jackson that's maybe a little different than our past experiences, that we've cut through some of that by the time we're able to talk to somebody. Like they found somebody that kind of fits that culture already. The quality of candidates that we had talked to, even if it didn't go anywhere, it seemed to be a little higher quality and a little more serious candidate than we were used to getting from some other entities and ways we use to recruit, right? So that cultural fit is so important, but it felt like that was built into their process a little bit because they knew who we were looking for, and that was already known when we talked to the candidates.
Great. Before we ask another question, is there anyone from the audience, based on Trey, Chris, or Brent's response, that spurred a question? Please don't be shy. We are all friends here. And please know you can also, as we continue to move forward here, you're welcome to implement questions into the chat. Myself or John are happy to read those off. Question I have for you three, having the opportunity to live and breathe recruitment efforts in my former career, I know references can be a key component to the front end of the process, getting references on providers to the back end as the decision makers, as Nebraska hospitals reviewing those references. Brent, can you talk about the reference process with Jackson, and then on the back end, Trey and Chris, would you be able to discuss what you look for when you're reviewing such references?
Yeah, I'm not too involved in the reference process on my end. That's going to be more with the partnership that, Chris and Treg have with their recruiter in pieces like that. What I will say on the reference side, which is pretty interesting, outside of your traditional, references of the physician, is I'm trying to think here. Troy Brunts had reached out actually yesterday. We just made a placement in Shenandoah, Iowa. Different state, obviously very different facility. And I mean, as you all know, CEOs know CEOs. I've got a meeting now this afternoon with Troy as he's looking for an oncologist. And we had gotten one placed over in Shenandoah fairly quickly here after starting the partnership, I think in about 6 days. But obviously a little bit of a different reference piece than you're asking about, Mike, but I'd love to hear what Treg and Chris have to say in regards to the references.
So I'll jump in. I think from the reference standpoint, I think it's very important that you've got good references, and we actually received our references on the front side. So as we got candidates, we already had references in hand to allow our medical staff to inquire and talk about those types of things, to really delineate who we wanted to bring on site and what that looked like. For us, they're looking very specific things. So they want to make sure they're a good citizen, they're a good practitioner, making sure that they fit within the community, and making sure that overall that it's going to be a long-term fit. Brent hit right on the head saying, we're looking long-term, and I think every facility goes into the mindset that, yeah, we want a long-term fit. We want somebody that's going to be here for 20 years or 25 years, whatever that looks like. Reality is that's probably not going to be happening. But I think if you get them intertwined in your community and know they're going to be a good fit from the cultural standpoint, but also understand from their references what their history's been, that leverages the opportunity to keep them long-term specifically. So the reference from our standpoint was great. It helped us to delineate who we were bringing in and who we weren't. And I think that worked well, getting it on the front side versus, okay, we're going to bring somebody on, we're going to make an offer, now let's talk about references. So.
It was really solid. I mean, I don't have much to add to what Treg said, just to say that was not an issue. The references checked out, and it was just a confirmation. Like, again, the candidates that were presented were solid. They didn't have, it wasn't my experience in the past. There was always lots of questions and some holes maybe with a group or two that I've used in many years ago, but this was different. It felt like they weren't going to present anybody that there was any question whatsoever. They were all rock solid. So including the references that checked out 100%.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, guys. If I can piggyback on that as well. Something I share up front, we're not a firm that's going to send you 20, 30, 40 CVs. Through the process of a search, you're probably going to get 6 or 7. And the reason you're getting 6 or 7 is because you're bringing us in to vet out the individuals that aren't a good fit for your opportunity. So, and another reason that I wanted to have Chris here, our search with Chris, I think, took 12 or 13 months to fill. There were some solid candidates along the way, but Chris understood that, hey, let's keep this thing going. The candidates are looking good. The references are looking good. All it's going to take is the right one to land. Would we love to get every search done in 4 or 5 or 6 months? Absolutely. But every once in a while, it takes a little bit longer. So I'm appreciative of Chris sticking with our process, believing in what we do, ultimately to get the right physician in his door.
Yeah, and just a little word about why we did that, why we stayed the course. It was because the quality of the candidates, and like we got into the weeds really far with a couple of them, and we ended up probably being their second choice. And the reasons for that were outside of our control. They had to do with maybe a spouse's idea of where they wanted to live, or location. When we lost, it was usually that. Second place was because a different location had more to offer. And so it felt like we were so close. We were knocking at the door. And as another amazing candidate was presented, we thought, here we go again. We got good at it too. I mean, we got good at our side of it, how we try to sell ourselves and present ourselves to a candidate, and involving the medical staff and even the community to some degree. And so it allowed us to probably get better at it than we were when we started. So
I'd like to add to that also. I think that you hit it right on the head, Chris, and Jackson helps you through that process. And so, we've been fortunate that we've not had to recruit a lot in the past. We don't have a lot of experience in the facility as far as recruiting physicians. And so going into it, they really helped prep the community on what to look for and how to best present ourselves and the community to candidates as they come through. So I did appreciate that. Our recruiter has been phenomenal. Communication has been outstanding. She's been in our corner and talking with us and talking through different scenarios, and we really appreciate it from that standpoint.
I think that's great feedback. Next question, Brent, you mentioned just a moment ago, clearly your team's focused in the Midwest, dedicated here to Nebraska. You work with neighboring states. Every state, in my experience, has different challenges. How does Jackson handle, say, maybe the unique challenges faced by Nebraska hospitals?
Yeah, I think they all flow together. If you're looking at Roseau, Minnesota, a town of 1,100 people that's 20 miles from the Canadian border, compared to an opportunity maybe in Gordon, Nebraska, same type of situation there, I believe. I think the big thing to understand is that we as an organization, especially here regionally in the Midwest, upper Midwest, really understand the types of physicians that are going to be looking for these opportunities. Binkelman comes to mind, family practice, a medical director. I think that took us about 6 months, but you've got a town of, I don't want to sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm not even sure if Binkelman is incorporated, is it? Isn't it like 653 people? Anyways,
I believe so.
Okay. Well, love Binkelman, by the way, and we loved working with Rita. And her goal was to get somebody in there right before her retirement, which is what we did. So I just think our our genuine understanding of rural physician recruiting, what it takes to get it done, knowing who to target. We're not looking for somebody that is living in California that wants to give rural Midwest a shot. If they are, they're there for a year and they're gone. And then the cost to replace that physician, the lost revenue, is extremely high and can have a negative impact on the community as well. Why can't we keep a physician? Why is everybody leaving? So I think it's just a genuine understanding of rural, having a passion for rural medicine. I get much more out of placing a physician in a rural community than I do in a metro area, meaning that physician in the rural community, it's all about the ripple effect for me. We get a doc in there. How many lives is that doc going to save? And then what's the impact after that? Let's say that I were to go in the hospital. If I live in rural, I go in the hospital. Well, guess what? I'm a single father. I have an 11 and a 13-year-old. If that doctor doesn't perform well on me and I'm gone, what's the impact on my kids, on the rest of their life? If we get a doc in there that's able to perform, save lives, get people in better health, it's a huge ripple effect, and that's what we look for. So I just think rural for us, 95% of my searches are rural. And when I say rural, I'm not talking about 25,000 people. I'm talking 5,000 people or less in a community is what I consider rural. Hope that answers the question, Mike.
Brent, I know we've talked about, you've worked with us for about 18 months. Can you talk about the types of physicians that you placed in that time and some of the other practitioners that you placed across Nebraska? I know it's a wide range, and so I wanted to have you share that out.
It's a very wide range. I think we've been partnering now for about 17 months, roughly 16 months. We have a placement a month in Nebraska. I actually have it pulled up here. So family medicine, OBGYN, electrophysiology, cardiology, breast surgery, neurology, urology, a bunch of family medicine, dermatology, ophthalmology, retina up in Columbus, which is a very difficult search. And I might say, the list goes on, but some of the areas, Sydney, we placed 3 physicians there, urology being one of them. Cozad, Sydney, Finkelman, Gordon, Geneva, Winnebago. So we know what we're doing, and the other piece with us is, I think Chris and Trey can attest to this. We don't ever send you all a CV to make it look like there's activity on your search or to make it look like we're working. That's a waste of everybody's time. We only send you CVs that we feel are individuals that are genuinely interested in your opportunity. We've learned about the spouse, if there's kids involved, what your community has to offer. Is there a certain type of church they're looking for? What kind of school are they looking for the children? We have all of those pieces. So if a search is taking a little bit while and you're not getting a ton of activity, it doesn't mean we're not working. We could pull up the applications and say, hey, we had 15 people apply. We just don't feel they're a good fit, and here's why. So yeah, just making sure whoever we're presenting, we feel they're a good fit for what you have to offer.
Thanks, Brent. So we kind of have a theme going here, but I wanted to ask Trey and Chris, compared to like firms that you've worked with or other searches that you've done, can you kind of compare and contrast Jackson to what some of your previous experiences have been?
I can start that. From day one, it was quite organized. It was, there was a plan. It was, and there was quite a lot of integrity with that because everything played out exactly as they said. We met the people that we would be working with closely on the search. They got to know us really well right away and how they could talk about our facility to candidates. And that they did a pretty thorough job of that. They did that in person. And then, they did more of that, externally, but from that point on, everything went just as they said it would. I think that one of the things that was really helpful was helping us benchmark what candidates are looking for in terms of when you get down to the nitty gritty, what kind of a package do you need to put together, and without telling us exactly, they gave us some benchmarks in the industry. Because the last time this facility in Geneva had landed a physician, it was 2014. And so the game had changed. You fast forward 8-9 years, it's different. There's different candidates, that's 9 years, that's a chunk of time. So in terms of what sort of recruiting package to put together, what type of benefits and salary, those were really helpful. And knowing where we could structure it to try to stay competitive was really good. And they helped us greatly with that. And so, like I say, when we missed on a candidate, we were second place a few times. It was almost always, and I think in all those cases, it was location. It was things that we couldn't control. The controllables, we had them down, like including, the environment of our medical community, which we control, and it's good and positive. But our offer, the things that we were putting together was rock solid, and they helped with that. I just felt like it was a real team effort. Never felt like we were out there ourselves trying to figure something out. We could reach out and we could work on this as a team and then present a united front when we talk to the candidate. So, and I guess the question was, how does that contrast to previous? Well, it was way more organized than I'd previously had. It was way more thoughtful. There was a lot more communication with Jackson than I had previously. And the candidates were of a higher quality. They were serious candidates. They weren't, you'd read a resume and you had questions right away. Like, why? That never happened. We were intrigued from day one with these candidates when we would read, a cover letter and a resume. And it's like, well, this looks like a legitimate candidate. And they were. So that's what was different about it.
I agree wholeheartedly with Chris. I think to me, it was more personal. And so I think that you have your team that's helping you recruit, and they're bringing quality candidates to you that are viable candidates for your location. It's not a mass mailing that you may get in response here and there, and they have no idea that where you live and the community you live, the size of the community you live, and everything was, intentional. And I think that it was put together very well. The communication, I can't say enough about that. Chris talked about that, and that's very true. We communicate a lot with our recruiter, and she's always in our corner there to help us if we have questions, or even we had a candidate that was on site and we had a question, and we texted her and she got right back to us, and it was on a weekend. And so that kind of service you don't get from everybody. And that type of professionalism, making sure that we're all set to go on our end, making sure everything's in place for the candidate to come aboard, is great, especially if you're not used to recruiting. And so I think that they've done a really good job of following through with what they say they're going to do, making sure that we're prepared to entertain clients or entertain candidates when they come aboard to our facility. And everybody's on the same page moving forward with that. So Chris hit it right on the head by saying that.
Another thing that was different that I would just add and say, we got fairly far along with some candidates in discussions, and they were considering us and we wanted them. There were some situations where the candidate felt more comfortable just dealing with us, and Jackson was gracious and allowed that to happen. There were some candidates that then dealt more with Jackson. That was fine. And that was all based on the candidate's preferences. And I think that's a really smart way to go about it, because you're trying to make the candidate feel comfortable. And I think in the end, that's maybe one of the reasons we landed the one we did, is because there was some flexibility in who was going to take the lead in the relationship. So Jackson was great working with us on that. So.
Yeah. And Treg, I just wanted to piggyback on something you just said as well, and just share with the group. Our president's been in this industry for 40 plus years now. He was a recruiter. We don't hire people that are 9 to 5. I'll just be very blunt about that. We understand that the recruitment process is you need to be available when physicians are available, which is usually after hours, on the weekends, and we do the same things for our clients, because at the end of the day, the way that we're set up, and I don't want to talk about fees or money or anything, but our recruiters don't get paid 1 cent on your search until placement happens. They're paid a salary, they've got to be able to pay their bills, but outside of that, there are no streams of revenue that come to your recruiter until placement occurs. So they are incentivized, first off, to get somebody in there sooner than later. Once again, always the right fit, or trying to get the right fit. And then, yeah, I mean, if it's a phone call at 11 o'clock at night and a physician is reaching out, 9 times out of 10, that recruiter is going to take that call. So we hire with intention here. We've got a great culture, but it's also individuals that are high level that are, willing to go above and beyond what traditional recruiters are willing to do. So just wanted to share that piece.
And I know we've been talking more at a granular Nebraska level. Brent, here's a question for you. We know at NHA, and our members know this, that healthcare is always changing. It's always evolving. It will always happen. So my question essentially is this: how does Jackson Physician Search stay up to date on industry trends at a nationwide level?
Yeah, no, that's great. So we're partnered with MGMA. We're the endorsed recruitment partner nationally with MGMA. I mean, if you look at the Midwest, we're the endorsed recruitment partner with the Minnesota Hospital Association, North Dakota, soon to be South Dakota, Nebraska, Colorado. So we're really in tune to what's happening in the market. We've got an amazing marketing team as well. So we do a lot of white papers. That's something that, if any of you on this call are ever looking for white papers in regards to physician compensation, retention, what's happening with the great retirement, just things like that, I'm always happy to send that stuff out. But we do a lot of white papers. And the other thing that allows us to do is stay in front of physicians. As I mentioned in the beginning, we've got an extremely robust physician opt-in database. We don't have physicians opting in for jobs. They're opting in to stay in tune with what's happening in the marketplace. And what's more interesting is when these physicians make a move somewhere else, they're updating their information in the system. So we know where they are, we've got their correct contact information and things like that. So I think our hospital endorsements allow us to do that. Actually, Tony is on the board at MGMA now. So, I mean, some pretty high level stuff and some high level partnerships across the nation allow us to stay in tune to what's happening.
That's great. Another question for you. This is a bit of a tricky one, but Brent, how does your team define success? What does success look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you'd have to ask each individual that. Success is painted a lot differently for each individual based upon who they are. And, success for some of my recruiters are financial goals. some success for others as, you know, making that perfect placement in an area that really needs a physician. I would say collectively for JPS, it's a very strong culture here. We do well so that we can do good, I think is probably the best way to put it. It's all about increasing levels of patient care at the end of the day. And how do you do that? You do that by bringing in great physicians that are great fits for the opportunities that we have. You know, one of the things that is every recruit perfect? No. Does somebody come in once in a blue moon that's not who they say they are? Yes. The good thing about that is when that stuff happens, we're willing to fix it. We're willing to work with our clients to make it right. The other thing that I really understand being here in the Midwest, and especially Nebraska, I've shared this with Mike and John a lot. You guys are a really small community. I can be over in Western Nebraska and Scott Bluff and had just met with somebody in Columbus, and the person in Scott Bluff already knows who I met with, what time, and what we had for lunch. So it's one of those things where word travels quickly. So it's extremely important that we're doing things the right way. If there's something that happens and it's our fault, we figure out a way to make it right. And it's all about long-term partnerships for us. I mean, you know, with Chris here, I think we're on our second search with you, Chris. We've been partnered for about 13, 14 months now, and we hope that continues for years to come. And we hope we fill these needs and you don't need us for 2 years, but then when you do, that you're calling me immediately and nobody else. And that's what we look for. It's the same with Treg. You know, Treg and I have had conversations for probably 15 or 16 months before he was ready to move forward. I'm not aggressive. I am going to check in every once in a while to stay top of mind, but when you're ready, you know, let's have that conversation and make sure it's a good fit. So it's all about relationships for us, but you know, at the end of the day, we do well so that we can do good in our communities.
So a question for all three of you, talking about the candidate process. So as a candidate's coming in to be in your community, maybe talk about what types of things you did for, you know, with the family, with how you engaged the candidate while they were there with you. And then once you did place somebody, what types of things were a part of the transition, maybe that Jackson helped with, or, you know, just along those lines.
I can start that. We worked hard on structuring a day that was, when we brought somebody in, we really wanted them to get a feel for who we were. So we spent a lot of time meeting different people, like leaders in the organization, medical staff. We set aside time for the medical staff. You know, these are the peers they'd be working with. Usually had like a lunch, and it was usually very relaxed. Some of them brought their families and their kids. You know, we're a family-based organization, so we loved seeing the kids, and you know, they were adorable, and everybody loved to see that. You know, and we spent our afternoons more in the community, looking at whatever they wanted to. If they needed to see what the churches were like or the schools, you know, we were able to get into the schools and take tours and talk to administrators. And then we actually did we learned and we got better at this, but we did a like a community greeting with some key people in the community, like board members, some key business people, people that would have a vested interest in who this person is, who this family is that we're bringing in. And that went over great too. I mean, I think that the candidates felt special when we did that. And we usually ended the night with dinner, just a smaller group of us, like myself and one of the other physicians, and just to kind of circle back and have a smaller, more intimate setting then. But it was a long day, but we wanted them to feel who we were. And I guess that answers part of your question, right? John, I think I can't remember the second part of your question.
second part was once you did place somebody, what was the transition process of getting them onboarded, and did Jackson assist with that? And
Yeah. Smooth. I mean, I don't, I can't, it was it wasn't too remarkable, but it was just smooth. I mean, it went fine, and we're the one that we landed won't start till late this year, but, everything wrapped up very smooth. So there was, at some point, there was kind of a transition where, like I said, they engaged more with us because we were courting each other, and and Jackson allowed that to happen, which I think really worked in our favor, so that was nice.
Yeah, I can echo that with what Chris said. For us, Jackson allowed us to establish an agenda of how we wanted to roll out the visit, and for us, it was all about community involvement as well, and making sure that they felt comfortable in our community and comfortable with our medical staff, and along with my leadership team. So we actually had a luncheon with our candidate and had my leadership team there to kind of get to know them, and then visited with our medical staff, and then had an evening meal with just the medical staff. I felt it was important that they had time to connect as a group without anybody there besides just the medical staff, which was great. And then we ended it with a breakfast at my home, and we brought them in to kind of see what homes were like and really connect on that personal level. But we allowed them to kind of get a feel for what the community was. We did community tours as well, got them into the school, so they could even see what that was like. It happened to be a basketball game going on, so there's a lot of activity at the school, which was great, just so they can get a feel for what the community is. And so I think earlier Brent kind of hit it that the spouse has got to be happy too, and so we wanted to include them and tailor that visit to what they wanted to see in the community, alongside with the provider that was coming in. So I think there's two facets to that. You got to make sure that the spouse gets to see what they want to see and talk to who they want to talk to, as well as the provider being able to talk with the staff at the hospital and the clinic and tour and all of that good stuff. So it was a full weekend for us. It just so happened it worked on a weekend. We weren't as busy, and to be honest with you, that kind of helped a little bit because we were able to get the provider into the hospital, round with our providers to see what it looked like to round, along with what our facilities were. It allowed them also some flexibility to see what it was like on the clinic side as well. So overall, it was a good visit, and we felt like there was a lot of good things from that, but we also learned, and so we know what not to do maybe next time, which is good from that standpoint.
Yeah, and if I can just jump in on that too, I think one of the big pieces here too for everybody on the call is it's extremely competitive out there. I don't know if everybody truly understands how competitive the market is. So to Treg and Chris, which they've done, working with a sense of urgency, getting somebody out there, showing them that you're genuinely interested. If you're going to put an offer, getting the offer in hand within 48 hours or getting them something even before they leave, to review, just to show you're interested. The sooner you're able to do that, the more wanted the physician is going to be. I always go back, it's just like dating. Are you going to, continue to hang around with somebody that, isn't texting you or calling you for multiple days at a time, where you have 6 other people trying to court you that are really showing that there's a high level of interest in who you are and wanting to get to know you? It's the exact same thing in the hospital or the physician group setting. They've got 4 or 5 other people talking to them, and they've probably got 2 or 3 other interviews set up. So when you get your hands on them, it's really rolling out the red carpet like these guys are doing. I mean, having dinner at your home, Treg, that's amazing. And just getting them really in a place where they're able to see themselves there. And then once you've got that, it's moving quickly with a sense of urgency. I can't talk about that enough in the market that we're currently in.
Great, thanks so much. And I would like to open it up to the group. Any questions you have for our speakers today, or any best practices that you've utilized in physician recruitment, provider recruitment, that you'd like to share out to the group? We'd love to hear that.
Yeah, is there anybody out there that's struggling right now, where, I don't know, you've got the candidates out there, you're not able to hook them, or you're not getting the candidates that you're looking for? Are there some areas that you're struggling in that maybe there's something I can send you in regards to a white paper, or having a conversation either way? Would certainly love to hear from a couple people on the call here.
And if you'd like to put that in chat, please do as well. And while we're waiting, I don't know if we have any closing comments from the three of you. If you want to go ahead and maybe talk about those, and then we'll just watch for any comments that come in the chat box.
One thing this is Chris. One thing I wanted to mention is going back to the very beginning, why we even pulled the trigger with Jackson. You know, we had not had great experiences with other groups, and we had in fact taken about 4 years off from using a recruiting group, and we were trying to do it ourselves, and we had some narrow misses. You know, I think it was Brent who came and visited me, and just the approach was different. The approach that he talked about wasn't mass mailings. It was much more of a targeted approach, using the Doximity platform, but also focusing on candidates that maybe were not actively looking, you know, and that really appealed to me. You know, like there's people out there that were sort of happy in their situation, but could life be better if, you know, we did a sort of a mid-career change? And we did talk to a couple and we ended up landing a new resident, but we did talk to a couple of those people, and somebody with experience. And so that whole approach was different than something that I had heard, and refreshing, and it just was really good timing. I think that resonated with us to try something different, because we didn't know. You know, I asked around a little bit and heard good things, but at that point in time, we were kind of taking a chance, you know, but pretty quickly that validated, you know, I want to say within 30 days, we were talking to a pretty solid candidate. I mean, less than that. And um, I can't remember how that turned out, but every candidate we worked with was pretty top notch and would have been a good fit here. But it has to work out for both parties. So
I'll agree with Chris, you know, and Brent talked about this. We've been talking for 15, 16, 17 months, however long you've been with NHA. And, you know, we tried the route of going it alone and doing our own thing and recruiting, because my providers had not had the best experience with recruiters in the past. And they weren't getting the candidates that would fit us specifically. And I think that Jackson's process to really narrow that down and bring the good candidates that fit exactly what you're looking for, I think that's what really got us to the table again. And now that my physicians have seen it, I think that they're a lot ease with the process and understand that the candidates that they get are going to be good candidates. They're going to be quality candidates that fit the culture, that fit exactly the direction we're going. You know, sometimes it's hard when you're in a rural setting. You know, Chris and I are probably 45 miles apart, Chris, something like that. So,
yeah,
you know, there's a lot of kids that go to medical school from this area, and to be real honest, Chris and I probably compete for the majority of them. Just because if they want to come back to this area, it's you know, there's facilities around, but all of us compete for those candidates. But Jackson is bringing something else to the table, along with, you know, those physicians that are new residents. Those are experienced, but, you know, maybe you're looking for something very specific that we may provide here, which is exciting from my standpoint, because I'm getting quality candidates that want to be rural, that want to work in a facility like mine, that have the understanding what rural is. We're not getting candidates from New York that don't have an understanding what rural medicine truly is. And they want to live in a rural community and raise their kids in a rural community. And that's where the partnership, I think, is formed, is the fact that they understand that and they bring that to the table and they follow through on all of those things that they promise.
The other thing that I would add, and
Go ahead,
just
Chris.
right off of what Treg said, is oftentimes those candidates that were not native Nebraskans had a connection in Nebraska somehow. And that was huge. And I think that was part of the reason why we were considering each other. And those were great, you know, and that was all part of the discovery process when Jackson was presenting this opportunity to candidates. And, you know, some of them had a unique connection in Nebraska, like an aunt or an uncle or a grandmother. And so that was phenomenal how those people were found. It wasn't just somebody randomly from Wisconsin. It was somebody there was a reason why this might work, right? And so that was impressive.
We did have one question come in the chat box here. Question for the group: are you seeing primary care physicians who are interested or wanting to take call?
What are you guys seeing? And then I'll give you my
Well, every rural hospital is probably unlike the next one. Everybody's so different. In our situation, our physicians don't take primary call. They take backup call, and that was probably a nice thing for the candidates. But I think that because that was the case, we didn't ever get the sense that, I don't know if we could accurately judge that, you know, because we have physician assistants who take primary call for the hospital, and the physicians are in backup scenario. And so that was appealing. And I think that, so I'm guessing that probably is somewhat of an issue, the work-life balance issue for many of them. So.
You know, for us, it was, I think that's part of all of the discovery. And so when they come in and start talking about what the opportunity looks like and what's all part of the opportunity, they're going to give you candidates that match that. And so in our case, it's kind of a mix. So they have the opportunity to take primary call if they like, but primarily they do backup. And so they brought us candidates that was appealing to them, and that's what they wanted. So I don't know if I agree with Chris. It's hard for us or for me to say this is what's happening in the market, because really the candidates that we received wanted what we had to offer and what we were requiring for call and those types of things. So that's the nice thing about it, is that they're going to tailor to your situation, and whether you want somebody that's hyper motivated or you want somebody that doesn't want any call, they're going to give you the candidate that matches that. And you're not going to have to try to sell a candidate on covering call, or it's only 1 in 6 or whatever. They're going to give you the candidate that actually fits the situation.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, Treg. Well done. Yeah, are we seeing it in the market? Absolutely. It's a case by case scenario. If you've got somebody, you know, that's fresh out, has a ton of school debt, looking to hammer that out, wants to be a little bit more of a workhorse, they're there. If you've got somebody 5 to 10 years experience, wants to do call to make some extra money, getting closer to retirement, whatever it might be, it's all there. So just like Treg said, it depends on your situation at your facility and what you're looking for. And those are the individuals that we're going to go out and target. And we're going to learn about that through the interview process or through the vetting process about, okay, what are your motivations? Here's what they're looking at call-wise. Is that something that that would work for you. And they might come back and say, well, that's too much call. What about this? So it's all through conversation, getting to know the physician, what their needs are, and matchmaking. But at the end of the day, yeah, there are primary care physicians that want to take call. You're back on mute again, John.
I'm back on mute again. Any other questions or comments that anybody'd like to put out there today?
I'll just throw one piece out real quick before we hop off. I'm actually out in Nebraska next week. If anybody has, I don't really have a full week planned yet, but I'm going to be out there Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So if anybody has any questions, you want to sit down and chat, I'm not like a lot of other BD reps. I'm meeting with Megan on Wednesday. Thanks, Megan. I like to be in the areas that we're recruiting. I like to build these relationships. There's a lot of BD reps in our industry that are transactional. I am not. I'm about a long-term relationship. I'm along, building friendships and, how can we serve along the way? If there's ways that, we can serve our clients. I played in Box Butte's golf fundraiser last year. I flew in the night before, had no idea it was Sturgis. I was the only person off the airplane in golf attire, carrying golf clubs while everybody else was renting motorcycles. Shot down, played in the golf event, and then, headed back out the next day. So it's not transactional for me. It's all about building the relationship. In Nebraska, when somebody mentions my name, I want somebody else to say, oh, I know Brent pretty well. Not, oh, who's that? So getting out there quite a bit, seeing the landscape, hearing what's happening, and how we might be able to serve along the way.
Brent, we had somebody ask if they could get your contact information. Would you mind emailing that out to the whole group?
Yeah.
After we're done.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I'll happy to shoot that out here when we're done. Thanks, Stacy.
Sure. All right. Well, we certainly appreciate this discussion. It was great dialogue for this is always a fascinating topic, and like hearing success stories of what's happening in the state. And so thanks to Chris and Treg for sharing
Absolutely.
your success stories with us. Yeah, certainly reach out to Brent. Happy to connect you with him. If anybody would like to be connected with him, we'll do that for you. So this was really, really helpful. I think we'd like to maybe do this maybe once a quarter, just to talk about, maybe some trends that are happening with provider recruitment, and again, sharing some best practices. So appreciate everybody's time today.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody, for joining.
Thanks.
Chris and Treg, thanks a lot.
You bet.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.